A bankrupt millionaire meets a girl asking for help on the street. An unexpected conversation brings an idea that could change everything. Simple apology hides a deep impact. A surprising revelation makes everything even more exciting. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and let us know which city you're watching from. The reflection in the mirrored glass of the skyscraper showed a Jack Thompson different from the one who, for years, had graced the covers of business magazines. His impeccable Italian suit still disguised the situation well, but his tired eyes and tense posture betrayed that something was wrong. From the 45th floor of Solartech's headquarters building, his billion-dollar company, he observed Chicago with a mixture of anguish and disbelief. "Mr. Thompson, the board meeting will begin in 5 minutes, announced Sarah, his assistant for over a decade, with a voice that betrayed concern. Jack adjusted his burgundy tie, his lucky charm present in all the great moments of his career, and walked towards the meeting room. Each step echoed through the marble corridor like a reminder of the empire he had built since founding the company in his garage 20 years ago. The boardroom, once the stage for his greatest achievements, now felt like a courtroom. 12 serious faces stared at him, each representing a considerable slice of the capital invested in Solartech. Among them, Eric Taylor, once his right-hand man and now his biggest internal critic, maintained a discreet and disturbing smile. "The numbers are clear, Jack," began Richard Miller, chairman of the board. "The company's last 3 bets resulted in substantial losses. The Nexus project consumed 40% of our working capital without showing results. The stock has fallen 62% in 6 months. Jack tried to maintain his composure, but his hands were sweating. "The technology market is volatile. We need to dare to innovate. Nexus is just—" "It's over," interrupted Eric, his former partner. "As is your reckless management. We called this extraordinary meeting to discuss the succession of the CEO position." The word succession hit Jack like a punch to the stomach. He looked at the faces around him, faces that a few months ago had admired him, seeking some sign of support. He found only serious expressions or averted gazes. "You can't do this." "I built this company from scratch," he protested, his voice betraying the emotion he was trying to contain. "Precisely because of that," Richard replied. "Your emotional attachment is costing shareholders billions. The vote will be held now." The next 2 hours were a blur of motions, legal arguments, and votes. When it ended, Jack was formally removed from the CEO position, retaining only a minority position on the board. His empire, built with so much sacrifice, was slipping through his fingers. As he left the room, Sarah was waiting for him with tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry, Mr. Thompson." "Prepare the documents from my personal office," he responded mechanically, walking towards the elevator. "Send everything to my house." In the parking lot, Jack got into his black Porsche but couldn't start it. His hands trembled on the steering wheel. 20 years of work, countless sleepless nights, immeasurable personal sacrifices. Everything seemed to have been in vain. For the first time in 2 decades, Jack Thompson left on foot from the building that was once his kingdom. The streets of Chicago, always so familiar when viewed from the top of his corporate penthouse, now seemed like a hostile labyrinth. As he walked aimlessly, his mind replayed every decision, every moment of arrogance, every time he ignored advice because he believed himself invincible. The sun was beginning to set when he realized he had walked for hours. He was in a neighborhood he didn't recognize, far from the luxury and power he was accustomed to. It was then that he heard a thin, hesitant voice. "Mister, could you help me?" Jack turned, finding a girl of about 12 years old, with expressive eyes and a worn backpack on her back. That encounter, although he didn't know it yet, was about to completely change the course of his story. Jack observed the girl for a few moments, noticing her curly hair tied in a messy ponytail and her school uniform already worn from use. On any other day, he probably would have ignored that approach, but something in her bright brown eyes made him stop. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice coming out harsher than he intended, still carrying the weight of the day's events. "Sorry to bother you," she replied, undaunted by his tone. "My name is Emily. I'm coming back from school and, well, I forgot my bus pass. Could you help me with the fare?" Jack reached into his suit jacket pocket, finding his Italian leather wallet. He opened it, realizing he only had high-value bills. In an impulse he didn't even understand, he decided to do more than just give her money. "You must be hungry, right?" he asked, noticing how she clutched the strap of her backpack in an obvious attempt to contain her nervousness. Emily hesitated for a moment, but then nodded. "A little. Actually, quite a bit. There's a diner on the corner. How about we eat something?" The girl's face lit up, but then she frowned. "My mom always says not to accept invitations from strangers." Jack couldn't suppress a small smile. "Your mom is right, but we can fix that. My name is Jack Thompson. I'm 45 years old, and I just had the worst day of my professional life. Now we're not strangers anymore." Emily laughed, a crystalline sound that seemed out of place on that grey street. "You're funny, Mr. Thompson. Okay, I'll accept the meal, but it has to be right there, where everyone can see through the window." In the simple diner, Jack found himself sitting in a plastic chair, something unthinkable by his usual standards. Emily ordered a hamburger with French fries and a chocolate milkshake, her eyes shining as she saw the order arrive. "So, Emily, why are you alone at this hour?" Between bites, she explained, "I had a math tutoring session. Usually my mom picks me up, but today she had to work overtime. She's a janitor in an office downtown." Jack nodded, thinking about how many times he had passed by people like Emily's mother without really noticing them. "And do you like math?" "Actually, I'm better at science. I love inventing things. Last week I did a project for the science fair about renewable energy. I used recycled materials to create a mini solar generator." Jack's interest was genuinely piqued. "Really? And how did it work?" Emily began to explain her project with contagious enthusiasm, using napkins to make improvised diagrams. Her explanation, although simplified, demonstrated a surprising understanding of the basic principles of solar energy. "You know what the problem with common solar panels is?" she asked, wiping a bit of ketchup from the corner of her mouth. "They're too expensive and not everyone can have them. I wanted to create something that anyone could assemble at home." Those words hit Jack like lightning. He suddenly remembered a project shelved years ago, something his team had considered too simple to be profitable. It was an alternative energy technology aimed at low-income communities, but it was abandoned in favor of more ambitious projects. "Emily, have you ever thought about being an engineer?" "All the time," she replied excitedly. "But my mom says it's very difficult, that it costs too much." "Nothing is impossible when you have determination," Jack said, realizing the irony of giving motivational advice on that particular day. "Did you know that I started my company in a garage?" "Really? What company?" "Solartech," he replied, expecting the usual look of recognition that his name usually provoked. Emily frowned. "Never heard of it. What do you guys do?" That sincere and unpretentious answer made Jack laugh for the first time that day. It was refreshing to talk to someone who didn't judge him for his success or failure, someone who simply saw another human being. As Emily finished her milkshake, Jack realized that his ideas were beginning to reorganize. The girl's simplicity and enthusiasm had awakened something he had lost amid board meetings and financial reports, the pure passion for creating and innovating. "Emily, what time does your mom finish work? I can wait with you, and then we'll take you both home." "She gets off at 8, but you don't have to, Mr. Thompson. You've already done a lot." "I insist. In fact, I have a proposal to make to both of you." The building where Emily's mother worked was one of those typical commercial buildings in downtown Chicago, with a personality-less facade and fluorescent lighting that leaked through the windows. Jack and Emily waited in the lobby, she swinging her legs sitting on one of the waiting benches, while he observed the movement of employees leaving. "My mom is going to freak out when she finds out I had lunch with the owner of a technology company," Emily commented, leafing through an old magazine left on the center table. "Ex-owner," Jack corrected automatically, feeling a pang in his chest. "What do you mean, ex-owner? Did you sell it?" Before Jack could answer, a woman of about 40 years old wearing a cleaning uniform hurried across the lobby. Her tired face lit up when she saw Emily, but quickly turned to concern when she noticed Jack beside her. "Emily, what's going on? Who is this gentleman?" "Mom, this is Mr. Thompson. He helped me when I forgot my bus pass and even bought me lunch," Emily explained excitedly. "Mrs. Jack extended his hand politely. "Lisa Parker," she replied cautiously, shaking his hand. "Thank you for helping my daughter, but Mrs. Parker, I know you must be worried, but I'd like to talk to you about something important. Can we have a coffee?" Lisa hesitated, looking from Emily to Jack. "I don't know if Mom, he's nice, and he has a technology company. Well, It's a complicated story, Emily intervened. After some insistence, Lisa agreed to go to a nearby bakery. Jack ordered 3 coffees and cheese pastries, observing how mother and daughter interacted. There was a touching complicity there, something that he in his years of obsession with business success had forgotten existed. Mrs. Parker, Jack began, your daughter has an extraordinary talent for science and technology. Today she explained to me a solar energy project she developed for the science fair, and it reminded me of something important. Lisa listened attentively as Jack explained his current situation, the forgotten alternative energy project, and how the encounter with Emily had awakened a new perspective. What I'm proposing is a partnership. I want to develop this project, but I need Emily's vision. She sees solutions that people like me, stuck in luxurious offices, can't see. You want my 12-year-old daughter as a consultant? Lisa asked, incredulous. Exactly. With your supervision, of course. It would be work for a few hours a week after school. In exchange, besides adequate compensation, I commit to funding her studies at a top-notch technical school. Emily almost jumped out of her chair. Mom, please, it's my chance to learn more about engineering. Lisa put her coffee cup on the saucer, thoughtful. Mr. Thompson, don't take this the wrong way, but why should I trust you? How can I be sure that this isn't a setup? Jack completed. Mrs. Parker, today I lost practically everything I built in the last 20 years. You know what your daughter taught me in just a few hours of conversation? That sometimes we need to go back to basics, to simple but powerful ideas. I'm not offering charity. I'm proposing a genuine exchange of knowledge. Lisa looked at Emily, who was practically begging with her eyes. And how would this work be? Jack explained his initial plans. Weekly meetings in a suitable space, always with Lisa's presence if she wished, schedules compatible with school, and a formal contract establishing all conditions. Besides, he continued, I need someone to organize the administrative part of the project. Mrs. Parker, I noticed your efficiency in managing your time between work and Emily's studies. I'd like to invite you to be part of the team as well. Lisa's eyes widened, surprised by the unexpected proposal. Emily squeezed her mother's arm, excited. See, Mom? We can work together. And I'll finally be able to study at a good school. Jack observed the scene, feeling something he hadn't experienced in a long time. Hope. There, in that simple bakery, with a cheap cup of coffee in his hands, he began to see a path to his redemption. Not for the millions he could recover, but for the possibility of creating something truly meaningful. So, Mrs. Parker, do you accept embarking on this journey with us? Lisa looked at her daughter, then at Jack, and finally gave a cautious smile. Her answer would change the fate not only of Emily, but also of Jack himself, although none of them could imagine the dimension that partnership would reach. 1 week after the meeting at the bakery, Jack stood in front of a renovated warehouse in the Lincoln Park neighborhood. The space, previously used as a storage facility for an old textile factory, would be the headquarters of his new project. It didn't have the luxury of solar tech, but it possessed something more valuable: potential. Are you sure it's not too big? Asked Lisa, who had just arrived with Emily to see the place. It's perfect, Jack replied, opening the sliding doors. We'll need space for prototypes and a testing area. The interior of the warehouse was surprisingly clean and well lit. Large windows in the ceiling allowed natural light to enter, and a mezzanine area offered space for offices. On the ground floor, several workbenches awaited equipment. This is amazing, exclaimed Emily, running to explore the space. We can set up a lab over there, and that corner would be perfect for the solar panels. Jack smiled, observing the girl's enthusiasm. In the past few weeks, he had used his personal savings to structure the project. The warehouse was rented, but the conditions were favorable, mainly because the owner was an old college friend who still trusted his vision. Good morning. Did I arrive at the right time? A female voice echoed from the entrance. Dr. Olivia, welcome. Jack walked to the newcomer. Lisa, Emily, this is Dr. Olivia Brooks, one of the brightest engineers I've ever known. Olivia, a woman of about 35 years old, wearing thick-framed glasses and black hair tied in a messy bun, greeted everyone with a warm smile. She had worked with Jack in the early years of solar tech, before leaving to pursue her doctorate. Jack told me about the project, said Olivia, addressing Emily especially. And about a young scientist who had a brilliant idea for accessible solar energy. Emily blushed, but her eyes shone with excitement. It's nothing special. I just thought that... Nothing special, interrupted a new male voice. Any idea that makes Jack Thompson step out of his comfort zone deserves attention. Lucas! Jack greeted the newcomer with a hug. Everyone, this is Lucas Wright, our software development expert. Lucas, a 40-year-old African-American man with dreads tied in a ponytail, carried a backpack full of equipment. I brought some toys for us to get started, he said, winking at Emily. As the morning progressed, more people arrived. Megan Torres, a digital marketing specialist, Chris Gomez, a solar energy technician, and Paul Mitchell, a veteran in project management who had worked with Jack for over a decade. Well, I think we're all here, Jack said, gathering the group. Before we officially start, I need to be transparent with you. This project doesn't have the backing of Solartech. In fact, we're completely independent, which means considerable risks and challenges. That's exactly why we're here, Olivia replied. I'm tired of projects that only aim for profit. I want to create something that makes a difference. But we need a name, suggested Megan. Something that represents our mission. Emily, who had been quietly observing everything, timidly raised her hand. Can I suggest something? Of course, Jack encouraged. After all, you're a fundamental part of this project. How about Solar Bright? Because we want to bring light to everyone, right? A reflective silence took over the environment, followed by approving smiles. Solar Bright, repeated Jack, savoring each syllable. Perfect, simple, direct, and meaningful. Lisa, who had been observing everything with a mixture of pride and apprehension, finally relaxed. Her daughter was surrounded by professionals who seemed genuinely interested in making a difference. So where do we start? Asked Paul, already pulling out his tablet to take notes. Jack looked at Emily. Why don't you show us your drawings from the science fair project? We can start from there. And an insistent ring on his cell phone interrupted his speech. It was a message from Sarah, his ex-assistant. Urgent. Eric is asking about your location. I think he discovered something about your new project. Jack put away the cell phone, maintaining his composure, but his mind was already calculating the next moves. The game was just beginning, and he needed to protect not only the project, but especially the people who had trusted him. Let's begin, he said, turning his attention to the group. We have a lot of work ahead of us. The first month of Solar Bright passed like a whirlwind. The warehouse, once empty, now pulsed with life and purpose. Workbenches full of equipment, whiteboards covered with calculations and diagrams, and the constant hum of computers created an atmosphere of innovation reminiscent of Solartech's early days. Emily had established her own little corner in the laboratory, where she spent afternoons after school developing miniature models with recycled materials. Lisa, in turn, proved to be a natural administrator, organizing processes and keeping everything running smoothly. It's impressive how she absorbs knowledge, Olivia commented to Jack, watching Emily help Chris adjust a solar panel prototype. Yesterday, she explained an energy efficiency concept to me that some of my undergraduate students have difficulty understanding. Jack smiled, but his expression soon turned serious as he checked another message on his cell phone. Eric, his former partner, had intensified his investigations. Sarah continued to be his eyes and ears at Solartech, alerting him to suspicious movements. Any problem? Asked Olivia, noticing his change in mood. Nothing you need to worry about, he replied, putting away his cell phone. How are we doing with the prototype development? Well, actually, Emily had an interesting idea. Olivia led Jack to the main workbench. She suggested using an alternative material for the support structure, something that would reduce the cost by about 40%. At the center of the workbench was an experimental model that merged conventional solar panel technology with a simplified but ingenious structure. Emily approached, carrying her notes. Mr. Thompson, remember when I talked about making something that anyone could assemble at home? So I thought, what if we used materials that people already have access to? Emily's explanation was interrupted by Paul's abrupt arrival, the project manager, with a worried expression. Jack, we need to talk. In private. In the mezzanine that served as an office, Paul showed Jack a series of emails on his laptop. Suntech, Eric's company, is developing a project very similar to ours. They even have patent applications in progress. Jack felt his stomach sink. Suntech was Eric's new company, created shortly after his departure from Solartech. How did they find out? I don't know, but there's more, Paul continued. They're contacting our suppliers, offering exclusivity contracts. We're about to run out of material options. Jack stood up, walking to the mezzanine window. Down below, he could see his small team working dedicatedly. Emily was showing something in her notebook to Chris, and Lisa was organizing documents with Megan. Paul, how long do we have until we need new supplies? 2 weeks maximum, and with prices rising... What's going on? Asked Lisa, who had come up to the mezzanine to deliver some reports. Her sharp intuition already sensed that something was wrong. Jack hesitated for a moment but decided to be honest. We're facing some difficulties with suppliers. Nothing we can't solve. Lisa crossed her arms, assuming that posture that Jack had already learned to respect. Mr. Thompson, when I agreed to be part of this project, it was on the condition of total transparency. If there's something threatening our work, we need to know. She was right, of course. Right. Jack gathered the entire team, including Emily, who listened attentively as he explained the situation. So they want to copy us? Asked Emily, indignant. But they don't even know what we're really doing. Actually, intervened Lucas, who had been quiet until then, this could be an advantage. They're trying to replicate something that doesn't fully exist yet. Emily, remember your idea about alternative materials? The girl's eyes lit up. Yes, what if we completely change the approach? Instead of competing for the same materials they want, we create our own supply chain, completed Olivia, understanding the concept. Jack watched in amazement as his team transformed a crisis into an opportunity. In a few hours, they had a new action plan outlined, with creative alternatives for each obstacle. Mr. Thompson, called Emily before leaving with her mother, don't worry. Sometimes the hardest path is the best path. Those simple words, coming from a 12-year-old girl, carried a wisdom that Jack had forgotten in his years of corporate success. As he watched mother and daughter leaving, he made a silent promise. This time he would do things the right way, not for profit, but for purpose. Night was falling over Chicago, but Solarbright's lights remained on. A new battle was beginning, and they needed to be prepared. A Saturday morning found the Solarbright team gathered at a cafe near the warehouse. It was a ritual they had established, informal meetings to discuss ideas without the pressure of the work environment. Emily, with a hot chocolate in front of her, was enthusiastically scribbling in her new notebook, a gift from Olivia. The problem isn't just the supplier issue, explained Megan, the marketing specialist, absent-mindedly stirring her coffee. Eric is building a narrative on social media. He's been hinting that there's a revolutionary solar energy project coming soon. He's preparing the ground, added Paul. When they launch their product, even if it's inferior, they'll have all the market attention. Jack listened in silence, observing the street movement through the cafe's window. His cell phone vibrated. It was Sarah again. Jack, Eric has scheduled a meeting with Solartech's main shareholders for Monday. Something about the future of sustainable energy. Excuse me, Lisa intervened, noticing Jack's tense expression. Maybe it's time we consider a different approach. Why are we trying to compete with them at their own game? Everyone turned to her, intrigued. What do you mean, Mom? Asked Emily, looking up from her notebook. Well, I spent years cleaning corporate offices. You know what I heard most in hallway conversations? Big companies always think big. They forget about ordinary people. Lucas nodded, understanding. You're suggesting that instead of trying to go head-to-head, we start small, completed Lisa. Focusing on local communities, proving that our technology works where it really matters. Emily practically jumped out of her chair. Like that project I saw at school about circular economy, we can create a network of users who are also partners. Jack felt something awaken in his mind. It was as if all the pieces were starting to fit together. Emily, explain this idea better. The girl opened her notebook to a specific page, revealing a diagram she had drawn during classes. It's like this. Instead of just selling the product, we create a system where people can participate in the process. Like one community helps assemble the panels for another, using local materials, and then they do the same for others. Olivia leaned over the drawing, adjusting her glasses. This is brilliant. We could create adaptable assembly kits with simplified manuals and local technical support. And the best part, added Chris, is that it would be practically impossible for a large corporation to copy this model. They don't have the structure or the mentality for this kind of community approach. Jack remained silent for a few moments, processing everything. He remembered his own journey, how he had distanced himself from his roots in pursuit of corporate success. "You know what this means," he finally said. "We're not just creating a cheaper product, we're revolutionizing the entire business model." "But we need a pilot project," pondered Paul, "something that demonstrates this really works." "I know the perfect place," said Lisa hesitantly. "The neighborhood where we live. We have a very active residents association, and electricity bills are a constant problem for everyone." "And I can talk to my science teacher," added Emily. "She always says the school needs practical projects for the students." The conversation flowed animatedly, with each team member contributing ideas and solutions. Jack observed, amazed, how such a diverse group had transformed into a true family. His cell phone vibrated again, another alert from Sarah. But this time, instead of worry, Jack felt confidence. Eric might have the resources and corporate power, but SolarBright had something much more valuable, a real purpose and people who believed in it. "There's one more thing," said Emily, turning to a new page in her notebook. "I've been thinking about how to make the energy distribution system more efficient between houses." As the girl explained her new concept, using napkins and empty cups as props, Jack realized he was smiling. For the first time since losing Solartech, he didn't feel defeated. He was at the beginning of something much bigger than he had ever built. The morning was advancing, and with it grew the certainty that they had found not just a way to overcome obstacles, but a completely new way of thinking about technology and social impact. The real challenge would be turning this vision into reality. The sun had barely risen when the SolarBright team arrived at Hope Valley, the neighborhood where Lisa and Emily lived. It was a special Saturday, the official start of the pilot project. The Residents Association had provided their space for the first presentation, and dozens of people were already gathering in the small community hall. "Nervous?" Emily asked Jack while helping to arrange the chairs. "A little," he admitted, adjusting the polo shirt that replaced his usual Italian suits. "It's different from presenting to executives." "It's better," smiled the girl. "Here, people really need what we're doing." Lisa coordinated the reception of residents with her characteristic efficiency. She had prepared folders with simplified information about the project and organized a community breakfast, where each family brought something to share. Olivia and Chris were finalizing the assembly of the demonstration prototype, a compact version of the solar system they had developed using accessible materials and simplified assembly techniques. "Good morning, everyone," Jack began, his voice trembling slightly. "We're here today to present something that we hope can make a real difference in your lives." To his surprise, Emily stood up and positioned herself beside him. "Can I help explain?" she whispered. Jack nodded, grateful for the support. "Hi everyone, most of you know me. I'm Emily, Lisa's daughter," she began naturally. "You know how much we pay for electricity bills, right? It's absurd, but what if we could change that?" The presentation flowed surprisingly naturally. Emily translated technical concepts into simple language, while Jack explained the practical aspects of the project. Olivia and Chris demonstrated how the prototype worked, and Lucas presented the app he had developed for system monitoring. "The most important thing," continued Jack, "is that we don't just want to install the equipment. We want to teach you how to assemble, maintain, and even improve them." It was then that Mr. Johnson, a respected gentleman in the community, raised his hand. "And how much is all this going to cost?" Jack took a deep breath. It was the crucial moment. "We've developed a collective financing system. Each family contributes what they can, whether in money, work, or materials. The idea is for everyone to participate and benefit." A murmur took over the hall. Megan, observing the reactions, made mental notes to adjust the communication strategy. Suddenly, a familiar voice sounded from the back of the hall. "And who guarantees this isn't just another scam?" Jack froze. It was Mark Wilson, one of the directors of Suntech, Eric's company. How had he discovered about the presentation? "I guarantee it," replied Lisa, stepping forward. "I've known each of you for years. Do you think I would participate in something to deceive our community?" Lisa's support was crucial. One by one, residents began to express interest in the project. Mr. Johnson was the first to sign up, followed by Mrs. Martinez from the grocery store and Professor Anderson from the local school. While registering the sign-ups, Jack noticed Mark making calls outside. His presence was no coincidence, and that worried him. "Mr. Thompson," called Emily, interrupting his thoughts. "Look at this." She pointed to a group of teenagers gathering around the prototype, asking technical questions to Chris and Olivia. Among them was Jason, a young man Lisa always praised for his talent with electronics. "They could be our first apprentices," suggested Emily, her eyes shining with enthusiasm. Jack observed the scene, residents animatedly discussing the project, young people interested in learning, families organizing into work groups. It was exactly what they had planned, but seeing it happen in practice was different. At the end of the morning, as they were organizing to wrap up, Lisa approached Jack. "There's something we need to discuss," she said, worried. Mark wasn't alone. "I saw him talking to some people from the bank that finances the neighborhood's construction projects." Jack nodded, understanding the implications. Eric wasn't just trying to copy the project, he was trying to make it unviable from the ground up. "We'll need to be faster," he replied, "and smarter." Emily, who had approached without them noticing, added, "And more united. Look how many people want to help." Jack looked around. His small Solar-Bright team naturally blended with the residents of Hope Valley, all sharing ideas and plans. Perhaps this was the true innovation, not the technology itself, but the way it united people. "Emily is right," said Olivia, joining the group, "but we need to prepare. Herrick won't give up easily." "Then he'd better prepare too," replied Lisa with a determined smile, "because we're not going to give up either." In the second week after the initial presentation, Hope Valley was buzzing with activity. The community hall had been transformed into an improvised workshop, where groups of residents learned the basics of solar energy under the guidance of Chris and Olivia. Jason, the young man who had stood out on the first day, had proven to be an exceptional student. His electronic skills, developed by fixing neighbors' appliances, adapted perfectly to the project. "Look at this, Emily," he said, showing a modification he had made to the panel supports. "If we use this angle, we can make better use of the light throughout the day." Emily examined the project with interest. "And what if we add a manual adjustment system? That way people can change the position according to the season." Jack observed the interaction of the young people with pride. The project was growing organically, exactly as they had planned. However, his moment of satisfaction was interrupted by a call from Sarah. "Jack, Eric presented Suntech's project to the shareholders. They're planning a subsidized solar energy system for low-income communities with guaranteed bank financing." "But that's practically a copy of our project," Jack protested. "With one crucial difference. They have capital and corporate infrastructure. And Jack, they're specifically targeting Hope Valley as a pilot area." Jack felt his stomach sink. Across the hall, Lisa was talking to a group of residents, explaining the collective contribution system they had developed. How could he compete with a corporation willing to offer subsidized financing? "Mr. Thompson," Emily's voice brought him back to reality. "Is everything okay?" Before he could answer, Lucas rushed into the hall. "Guys, we need to talk. Now." In an improvised room at the back, Lucas showed his laptop. "I just received an anonymous email with internal documents from Suntech. Apparently their project has a hidden clause. Whoever accepts the financing will be obligated to buy energy exclusively from them for 10 years. "It's practically a servitude contract," exclaimed Lisa, who had joined the conversation. "Exactly," continued Lucas. "They're not selling solar energy, they're creating dependency." Jack rubbed his face, thoughtful. "But how are we going to compete with the financial conditions they offer?" It was then that Emily, who had been unusually quiet, raised her hand. "What if we didn't need to compete?" Everyone turned to her. "Explain better, honey," Lisa asked. "Well, Jason showed me how he fixes things here in the neighborhood. He doesn't charge much, but people pay with what they can, sometimes with food, sometimes by helping with other services. It's like the community's own economy." Olivia adjusted her glasses, interested. "A community exchange system." "More than that," continued Emily, getting excited. "We already have people learning to assemble and maintain the equipment. If each family contributes something, work, recyclable material, installation space, the real cost decreases a lot. And we can establish partnerships with other communities," added Jason, who had quietly approached. "My uncle works with electronic recycling in Oak Park. There's a lot of material that can be reused." Jack observed the discussion with a mixture of admiration and hope. The solution wasn't in trying to go head-to-head with Suntech, but in creating a completely different system. "We need to act fast," said Lisa. "The bank representatives have already started visiting families, offering Suntech's project." "Then let's show concrete results," replied Jack. "Emily, Jason, gather the other young people. We're going to install the first complete system this week." "At my house," offered Mr. Johnson, who had also approached. "Everyone here knows me. They can see the system working and draw their own conclusions." The team spent the next few hours refining the plan. Megan developed a communication strategy based on testimonials from the residents themselves. Lucas adapted the app to include a system for controlling community contributions. Chris and Olivia further simplified the assembly process. At the end of the day, as he watched the sun set over Hope Valley, Jack realized he was smiling. Eric might have corporate power and money, but SolarBright had something much more valuable, a united and determined community. "Mr. Thompson," called Emily, interrupting his thoughts. "Jason had another idea to improve the system. You need to see this." Jack followed her, knowing that each small innovation, each community contribution brought them one step closer to their goal. The battle was just beginning, but now they had something that no corporation could buy: purpose and belonging. The installation of the solar system at Mr. Johnson's house turned into a community event. Dozens of residents took turns helping, while others watched the process attentively, taking notes and asking questions. Jason led a group of young apprentices, explaining each step with the confidence of someone born to teach. "It's incredible how quickly they learn," Olivia commented to Jack, watching the teenagers work. "In a week they've mastered concepts that took me a semester to learn in college." "Maybe because they see a real purpose in this," Jack replied. "It's not just theory." Emily circulated among the groups, her notebook always in hand, recording suggestions and adaptations proposed by the residents. Her ability to connect different ideas was proving invaluable. "Mr. Thompson," she called, running towards him. "Mrs. Martinez from the grocery store had an incredible idea. She wants to use her roof space to create a community solar hub." Before Jack could respond, Lisa approached with a worried expression. "We have a problem. Suntech representatives are in the neighborhood again, this time with contracts ready for signing." Jack followed Lisa to the main street, where a group of well-dressed executives was approaching residents. Among them, he recognized Mark Wilson, who smiled sarcastically upon seeing him. "Well, if it isn't the great Jack Thompson," Mark provoked. "Still playing at social projects? What are you offering, Mark? 10 years of dependence disguised as help?" "We offer security and professional structure," Mark replied, loud enough for nearby residents to hear. "Unlike your amateur little project." "Amateur?" Emily's voice cut through the air. She had approached without them noticing. "Come see something, then." Before anyone could stop her, Emily took Mark by the hand and dragged him to Mr. Johnson's house, where the installation was almost complete. Jason and his team were making final adjustments. "Jason, show him how the monitoring system you developed works," Emily requested. Jason, initially shy in front of the executive, gained confidence as he explained his innovation, a simple system that allowed consumption control through any basic cell phone. "And the best part," continued Emily, "is that anyone can learn to do maintenance. We don't need to rely on expensive technicians or abusive contracts." A small crowd had formed to watch the scene. Mark tried to maintain his composure, but his discomfort was visible in the face of the practical demonstration. "This is interesting," he conceded, adjusting his tie, "but it still doesn't solve the financing issue." "As for that," Mrs. Martinez intervened, emerging from the crowd, "we already have our own solution. Show him the cooperative project, Emily." With pride, Emily and Jason presented the plans for the community solar hub. The project, developed collectively, envisioned an energy-sharing system between houses, drastically reducing individual costs. "And that's not all," added Lisa. "We already have 3 other communities interested in replicating the model. Jason is training local teams." Jack observed in silence, marveled at how the project had evolved beyond his initial expectations. It was no longer just about solar energy, it was about community empowerment. Mark and his team left shortly after, visibly disgruntled. As soon as they left, Olivia approached Jack. "They won't give up easily," she warned. "Eric has a lot to lose if this model spreads." "I know," Jack replied, "but now we have something they can't fight. Real results and a united community. At that moment, a cheer echoed down the street. The system at Mr. Johnson's house had been successfully activated. Lights came on, appliances started working, all powered by the sun's energy. "You know what's most amazing?" Emily commented, joining them. "Tomorrow we're going to teach all of this to more people, and then to more and more." Jack smiled, remembering when he thought success was measured only in numbers and profits. There, seeing the genuine joy on the residents' faces, he understood that he had found something much more valuable. "Emily," he called, "I think it's time to expand our project. What do you think about presenting this at your school?" The girl's eyes sparkled with the possibility. A new chapter was about to begin, and this time they were more prepared than ever for the challenges that would come. The auditorium of Lincoln Middle School was packed. Students, teachers, and parents crowded to watch the special presentation of the Solar Bright project. On the improvised stage, Emily nervously adjusted her school uniform while Jack organized the slides. "Relax," whispered Jason, who was there to provide technical support. "You've explained this thousands of times in Hope Valley." "It's different," Emily replied. "Here there are people from all over the region." And it was true. News of the success in Hope Valley had spread quickly, attracting interest from other communities. Principal Hernandez, a visionary educator, had transformed the presentation into a special event about sustainability and social entrepreneurship. "Good morning, everyone," Jack began, his voice echoing through the microphone. "Today I'm not here as a businessman, but as someone who learned a valuable lesson about innovation and community." He paused, looking at Emily, who understood the signal to join him. "Hi, everyone," she began, her initial nervousness transforming into enthusiasm. "My name is Emily, I'm in 7th grade, and I want to show you how we're revolutionizing access to solar energy in our neighborhood." The presentation flowed naturally. Emily and Jason demonstrated how the system worked using a miniature model, while Jack explained the economic and social aspects of the project. Olivia and Chris, seated in the front row, smiled proudly as they watched their students master complex technical concepts so naturally. Midway through the presentation, Megan, who was monitoring the project's social media, discreetly nudged Lisa, showing her tablet. A video of the presentation, live-streamed by one of the students, was going viral. "This wasn't in the plans," Lisa whispered, worried. But it was too late to worry. The transmission had already reached thousands of views, and positive comments were flooding social media. After the formal presentation, something unexpected happened. Students from other schools who had come with their teachers began asking questions not just about the solar system, but about how they could start similar projects in their own communities. "What if we created a network of solar schools?" suggested a science teacher from a neighboring school. "We could integrate the project into the science and technology curriculum." The idea caught fire. In minutes, principals and teachers from 5 different schools were discussing collaboration possibilities. Emily and Jason found themselves surrounded by other students eager to learn. It was then that Lucas, who was monitoring his digital security alerts, noticed something concerning. "Jack, we need to talk now." In a reserved corner of the auditorium, Lucas showed his laptop. "Suntech just announced a national solar energy program for public schools. They're using our idea, but with $1 million budget." Jack felt the weight of the news, but before he could respond, he was interrupted by a growing buzz in the auditorium. Principal Hernandez had taken the stage again. "Everyone, I've just received extraordinary news," she announced. "The video of our presentation has reached the Department of Education. They want to learn about the project in person." The excitement was palpable, but Jack knew they were entering dangerous waters. Suntech had powerful political connections and virtually unlimited resources. "Mr. Thompson," called Emily, who had approached silently. "You're worried about Suntech, aren't you?" Jack nodded, surprised by the girl's insight. "You know what the difference is between them and us," she continued. "They have money, but we have the people. Look." She pointed to different parts of the auditorium. Groups of students and teachers animatedly discussing ideas, parents offering support, representatives from other communities making plans. "This isn't just our project anymore," Emily concluded. "Now it belongs to everyone." Lisa joined them, followed by Olivia and Chris. "So, what's the next step?" Jack looked at his team, then at the auditorium full of people energized with possibilities. Suntech might have financial resources, But they had something much more valuable, a network of people committed to real change. "The next step," he replied, a smile forming on his face, "is to show that true innovation doesn't come from top to bottom, but from people to people." Emily took her notebook, already scribbling new ideas. "We can create an online manual with all the instructions in simple language and make tutorial videos and workshops in schools," added Jason. "And a platform for sharing experiences between communities," completed Lucas. As the group animatedly discussed the next steps, Jack realized they had reached a point of no return. The project had taken on a life of its own, growing far beyond their initial expectations. The battle with Suntech was just beginning, but now they had something that no corporation could buy: the power of education and community mobilization. Solar Bright's office was buzzing with activity that Monday morning. After the success of the school presentation, dozens of communities had reached out interested in the project. Megan could barely keep up with organizing all the incoming messages. "Look at this," she said, showing her computer to Jack. "We already have requests from 15 different schools and 7 neighborhood associations." Jack was about to respond when Sarah, his former assistant at Solar Tech, burst through the door out of breath. "Jack, you need to see this urgently," she said, handing over a folder. "I managed to access some internal documents from Suntech. You won't believe what I found." Inside the folder was a series of emails and memos that revealed something surprising. Suntech's solar energy project wasn't originally Eric's. In fact, it was an adaptation of an old Solar Tech project, developed years earlier by a junior team that included... "Olivia?" Jack looked incredulously at the documents. "You worked on this original project?" Olivia, who was just arriving with Emily and Lisa, stopped at the door, surprised by the question. "Yes, it was my first project at Solar Tech," she replied, nervously adjusting her glasses. "But it was shelved because they said it wasn't profitable enough." "Actually," continued Sarah, "the project was more than shelved. It was deliberately buried because it threatened some important contracts with traditional energy companies." Emily, who had picked up one of the documents, frowned. "Wait, there's something strange here. This date. This was just days before you left the company, Dr. Olivia." Olivia took a deep breath, as if finally able to share something she had been carrying for a long time. "I didn't leave, Emily. I was pressured to resign because I refused to abandon the project. Eric was the operations director at the time and said I was being too idealistic." Jack sat heavily in his chair. Memories of old meetings began to make sense. Decisions he had accepted without questioning, blindly trusting Eric. "Why did you never tell me this?" he asked Olivia. "Because you were so focused on the company's growth that you wouldn't have listened to me," she replied without resentment. "Sometimes we need to lose everything to see what really matters." Lisa, who had remained silent, stepped forward. "And now, what do we do with this information?" "I know!" exclaimed Emily, her eyes shining with that expression everyone knew well. "What if we use Dr. Olivia's original project? It must be much better than this manipulated version from Suntech." Lucas, who had arrived during the conversation, was already at the computer. "I can try to recover the original files from Solar Tech's old backup. I still have some access." "That won't be necessary," said Olivia, opening her bag and pulling out an old flash drive. "I kept everything. I always knew this project would find its right moment someday." The team spent the next few hours reviewing the original project. It was impressive how many of the ideas they were developing were already there, in embryonic form, years earlier. "This is why Eric is so determined to stop us," Jack concluded. "He knows this project can change the entire energy market. And now we have something we didn't have before," added Emily. "People willing to make it happen." Lisa smiled, proud of her daughter. "And we have much more than that. We have entire communities ready to prove it works." Jack looked at his team, each face reflecting determination. What had begun as a personal redemption project had transformed into something much bigger. "I think it's time we pay Eric a visit," he finally said. "But first, we need to prepare properly." "What do you mean?" asked Jason, who had just arrived with news from Hope Valley. "We're going to do this the right way this time," Jack replied, "with total transparency and community participation. Emily, I think you should lead the presentation." The girl's eyes widened. "Me? But yes, you," confirmed Olivia. "Because you represent exactly what this project should have always been, a bridge between technology and real people." As the group began to plan their next steps, Jack observed with a mixture of pride and determination. The revelation about the project's past had given them not just a strategic advantage, but also an even greater responsibility. The real battle was just beginning, but now they had something Eric would never expect: the truth on their side, and an entire community ready to fight for it. Suntech's headquarters occupied 3 floors of a modern office building in downtown Chicago. Jack adjusted his tie, the same burgundy one he had worn in so many corporate battles, while waiting in the luxurious lobby with Emily, Olivia, and Lisa. "Remember," he said, "regardless of what happens in there, we maintain our professional posture." "Mr. Thompson," called the receptionist. "Mr. Herrick will see you now." As they rode up in the panoramic elevator, Emily clutched her folder to her chest. Inside, besides the presentation they had prepared, was something Eric didn't expect: Olivia's original project, with all her notes and innovations. The conference room on the top floor had a view of all of Chicago. Eric awaited them, seemingly relaxed in his Italian leather chair, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. "Jack, what a pleasant surprise," he said, his gaze scanning the group with curiosity. "And I see you've brought interesting company." "Eric," Jack responded formally, "we've come to discuss the future of solar energy in communities." "Ah, yes, your little social project. Admirable, really, but—" "Actually," interrupted Emily, stepping forward, "we've come to talk about this." She opened her folder and began projecting slides on the room's screen. Eric observed with a mixture of amusement and condescension until a specific image appeared: the original diagram of Olivia's project. The smile vanished from his face. "How did you—" "The original project," explained Olivia. "The one you buried 5 years ago, Eric, but now it's alive again, and better than ever." Emily continued the presentation, showing the practical results from Hope Valley, the energy-saving data, the community involvement, and most importantly, the technical improvements they had developed. "And the most important thing," she concluded, "all of this is documented and registered in the community's name. Open source, Eric. It can't be monopolized." Eric stood up abruptly, his face red. "This is ridiculous. You don't have the structure, you don't have the capital." "But they have me," a new voice sounded from the door. Everyone turned. There stood Richard Miller, the chairman of SolarTech's board, accompanied by 2 other board members. "Richard, what does this mean?" Eric stammered. "It means," Richard replied, "that I've spent the last few weeks investigating some inconsistencies in certain corporate decisions, including exactly how you obtained privileged information about archived SolarTech projects." Jack watched in astonishment as Richard joined them at the table. "Jack," Richard continued, "I must admit we made a mistake in removing you. But you also made mistakes by distancing yourself from the principles that founded SolarTech." "And now?" asked Lisa, breaking the tense silence that followed. "Now," Richard answered, "I propose a partnership, not an absorption but a true collaboration. SolarTech can provide the necessary structure and capital while maintaining the autonomy and community model you've developed." Eric tried to protest, but Richard silenced him with a gesture. "As for you, Eric, I suggest you start looking for another job. The board will be very interested in discussing your recent actions." Emily, who had been watching everything with wide eyes, discreetly tugged on Jack's sleeve. "Mr. Thompson, is this good or bad?" Jack smiled, beginning to understand the bigger picture that was forming. "It depends on how we use this opportunity, Emily. What matters is that we maintain our original mission." "And what is that mission?" Richard asked, genuinely interested. It was Lisa who answered: "Transforming technology into a tool for real social change, not just bringing solar energy to communities, but empowering people to be protagonists of this change." Richard nodded, impressed. "And that's exactly why we want to be part of this project. SolarTech needs to return to its roots of innovation with purpose." As the details began to be discussed, Jack observed Emily enthusiastically scribbling in her notebook, probably already planning the next improvements to the project. Olivia was talking technically with the board members, her ideas finally finding receptive ears. The afternoon was advancing over Chicago, and in Suntech's conference room, a new chapter was beginning to be written. It wasn't the ending Jack had imagined when he started this journey, but perhaps it was exactly the new beginning that everyone needed. 3 months after the meeting at Suntech, the Solar Bright warehouse had transformed. New equipment shared space with the improvised tools that had marked the project's beginning. A discreet sign at the entrance now indicated, Solar Bright, a community initiative in partnership with SolarTech. "I still wonder if we made the right choice," Lisa commented, organizing documents at her new desk on the mezzanine. Jack, who was observing the movement on the ground floor where Jason was conducting training for representatives from other communities, understood her concern. "Look," he pointed downwards. Emily was circulating among the groups, explaining technical concepts with the same simplicity as always, even while using a state-of-the-art tablet provided by SolarTech. Her school backpack, still worn, rested next to cutting-edge equipment. "We've managed to maintain the balance," Jack continued. "Technology serves the people, not the other way around." Olivia climbed the mezzanine stairs, carrying a stack of reports. "You need to see this. The results from the first quarter are impressive." The numbers were truly surprising. 10 communities had already implemented the system, with another 20 in the training phase. Energy consumption in the serviced areas had fallen by an average of 60%, and most importantly, the entire process continued to be conducted by the residents themselves. "Richard called this morning," Olivia commented. "The board is impressed with the social return on investment. And with the financial return too, I imagine," Lisa observed, always attentive to details. "Actually," Jack replied, "they're more interested in the social business model we've developed. Other companies have already shown interest in replicating the system in different sectors." Emily, who had come up without them noticing, joined the conversation. "Like Mrs. Martinez's community garden project." "Exactly," Jack smiled. "The idea of solar energy is evolving into a larger concept of community sustainability." Lucas, arriving with his laptop, added, "And the community management app already has more than 5,000 active users. People aren't just managing energy, they're creating mutual support networks." The buzz of voices on the ground floor increased. A new group had arrived for training, this time including representatives from a rural community in the state's interior. "Mr. Thompson," Jason called from below, "they have some interesting ideas about adapting the system for agricultural areas." Jack signaled that he was coming down, but first turned to his team. "You know what's most impressive about all this? It's not the numbers nor the technology. It's how each community is making the project their own, adapting and improving it." Lisa smiled, watching her daughter already running downstairs to hear the new ideas. "It's because we never tried to impose a ready-made model. We let each place find its own way." "And speaking of ways," said Olivia, "I received an interesting invitation. The university wants to establish a partnership to create a technical course in community solar energy." "With scholarships?" Emily asked, who had returned to get her notebook. "Yes, primarily for young people from the served communities," Olivia confirmed. Jack observed the movement in the warehouse, people from different places, ages, and backgrounds, all united by a common purpose. The project had grown more than any of them had imagined, but without losing its essence. "You know what's funny?" he commented. "When I lost SolarTech, I thought I had lost everything. Little did I know I was about to find something much bigger." "It wasn't just you who found something bigger," said Lisa. "Look how many lives have been transformed. And not just because of solar energy." Emily, who was scribbling in her notebook, looked up. "It's because it's not just about energy, right? It's about people believing they can make a difference." Jack nodded, remembering the day he met a girl asking for help on the street. Who could have imagined that moment of vulnerability would turn into a silent revolution? The afternoon sun entered through the warehouse windows, illuminating the exposed solar panels and the people gathering around them. It was an image that perfectly symbolized what they had achieved: technology and humanity working in harmony. "Well," said Emily, closing her notebook, "I think we need to start thinking about the next step." "And what would that be?" Jack asked, already anticipating she would have some transformative idea. The girl's smile indicated that a new adventure was about to begin.